This is the last chapter of Pippi Longstocking. It's chapter 11. Pippi celebrates her birthday. I wonder how old she is. I kind of picture her about 10 or 11. How about you? One day, Tommy and Annika found a letter in their mailbox. It was addressed to TMMY and ANIKA. And when they opened it, they found a card which read, Tommy and Annika are invited to Pippi's tomorrow to her birthday party. Dress whatever you like, or wear whatever you like. And here it is, and you can see her spelling is terrible. Remember, she hasn't been to school. Tommy and Annika were so happy they began to skip and dance. They understood perfectly well what was printed on the card, although the spelling was a little unusual. Pippi had had a great deal of trouble writing it. To be sure, she had not recognized the letter I in school the day she was there, but all the same, she could write a little. When she was sailing on the ocean, one of the sailors on her father's ship used to take her up on the deck in the evening now and then to try to teach her to write. Unfortunately, Pippi was not a very patient pupil. All of a sudden, she would say, No, Friedolf, that was his name. No, Friedolf, bother all this learning. I can't study anymore now because I must climb the mast to see what kind of weather we're going to have tomorrow. So it was no wonder the writing didn't go so well now. One whole night she sat struggling with that invitation, and at dawn, just as the stars were paling in the sky over Villa Villacula, she tiptoed over to Tommy's and Annika's house and dropped the letter into their mailbox. As soon as Tommy and Annika came home from school, they began to get all dressed up for the party. Annika asked her mother to curl her hair, and her mother did, and tied it with a big pink satin bow. Tommy combed his hair with water so that it would lie all nice and smooth. He certainly didn't want any curls. Then Annika wanted to put on her very best dress, but her mother thought she better not, for she was seldom neat and clean when she came home from Pippi's. So Annika had to be satisfied with her next best dress. Tommy didn't care what suit he wore, so as long as he looked nice. Of course, they bought a present for Pippi. They'd taken the money out of their own piggy banks, and on the way home from school had run into the toy shop on Main Street and bought a very beautiful, well, what they bought was a secret for the time being. There it lay, wrapped in green paper and tied with a great deal of string. And when they were ready, Tommy took the package and off they went, followed by their mother's warning to take good care of their clothes. Annika was to carry the package part of the way, and they were both to hold on to it when they handed it to Pippi. That they had agreed upon. It was already November, and dusk came early. When Tommy and Annika went in through the gate of Villa Villacula, they held each other's hands tightly, because it was quite dark in Pippi's garden, and the wind sighed mournfully through the bare old trees. Seems like fall, said Tommy. It was so much pleasanter to see the lighted windows in Villa Villacula and to know that they were going to a birthday party. Ordinarily, Tommy and Annika rushed in through the kitchen door, but this time they went to the front door. The horse was not on the porch. Tommy gave a lively knock on the door. From inside came a low voice. Who comes in the dark night on the road to my house? Is it a ghost or just a poor little mouse? No, no, Pippi, it's us, shrieked Annika. Open the door. Pippi opened the door. Oh, Pippi, why did you say that about a ghost? I was so scared, said Annika, and completely forgot to congratulate Pippi. Pippi laughed heartily and opened the door to the kitchen. How good it was to come in where it was light and warm. The birthday party was to be in the kitchen because that was the pleasantest room in the house. There were only 2 other rooms on the first floor, the parlor, in which there was only one piece of furniture, and Pippi's bedroom. The kitchen was large and roomy, and Pippi had scrubbed it till it shone. She'd put rugs on the floor and a large new cloth on the table. She embroidered the cloth herself with flowers. It certainly looked most remarkable, but Pippi declared that such flowers grew in farthest India, so of course that made them all right. The curtains were drawn and the fire burned merrily. On the woodbox sat Mr. Nilsson, banging pot lids together. In a corner stood the horse, for he too had been invited to the party. Now at last Tommy and Annika remembered that they were supposed to congratulate Pippi. Tommy bowed and Annika curtsied, and then they handed Pippi the green package and said, "May we congratulate you and wish you a happy birthday." Pippi thanked them and eagerly tore the package open, and there was a music box. Pippi was wild with delight. She patted Tommy, and she patted Annika, and she patted the music box, and she patted the wrapping paper. She wound up the music box, and with much plinking and plonking came out a melody that was probably supposed to be "Ach du Kar Augustin." Pippi wound and seemed to forget everything else. But suddenly she remembered something. "Oh my goodness, you must have your birthday presents too," she said. "But it isn't our birthday," said Tommy and Annika. Pippi stared at them in amazement. "No, but it's my birthday, isn't it? And so I can give birthday presents too, can't I? Or does it say in your school books that such a thing can't be done? Is it something to do with that old plunkification and makes it impossible?" "Oh, of course it's possible," said Tommy. "It just isn't customary. But for my part, I'd be very glad to have a present." "Me too," said Annika. Pippi ran into the parlor and brought back 2 packages from the chest. When Tommy opened his, he found a little ivory flute, and in Annika's package was a lovely brooch shaped like a butterfly. The wings of the butterfly were set with blue and red and green stones. When they all had their birthday presents, it was time to sit down at the table, where there were all sorts of cakes and buns. The cakes were rather peculiar in shape, but Pippi declared they were just the kind of cakes they had in China. Pippi served hot chocolate with whipped cream, and the children were just about to begin their feast when Tommy said, "When Mama and Papa have a party, the gentlemen always get cards telling them what ladies to take in to dinner. I think we ought to have cards too." "Okay," said Pippi, "although it'll be kind of hard for us because I'm the only gentleman here," added Tommy doubtfully. "Fiddlesticks," said Pippi. "Do you think Mr. Nielsen's a lady, maybe?" "Oh, of course not. I forgot Mr. Nielsen," said Tommy, and he sat down on the wood box and wrote out a card. "Mr. Settergren will have the pleasure of taking Miss Longstocking in to dinner." "Mr. Settergren, that's me," he said with satisfaction, and showed Pippi the card. Then he wrote on the next card, "Mr. Nielsen will have the pleasure of taking Miss Settergren in to dinner." "Okay, but the horse must have a card too," said Pippi decidedly, "even if he can't sit at the table." So Tommy, at Pippi's dictation, wrote, "The horse will have the pleasure of remaining in the corner, where he will be served cakes and sugar." Pippi held the card under the horse's nose and said, "Read this and see what you think of it." As the horse had no objection to make, Tommy offered Pippi his arm, and they walked to the table. Mr. Nielsen showed no intention of offering his arm to Annika, so she took a firm hold of him and lifted him up to the table. But he didn't want to sit on a chair. He insisted on sitting right on the table. Nor did he want any chocolate with her whipped cream. But when Pippi poured water in his cup, he took it in both hands and drank. Annika and Tommy and Pippi ate and ate, and Annika said that if these cakes were the kind they had in China, then she intended to move to China when she grew up. When Mr. Nielsen had emptied his cup, he turned it upside down and put it on his head. When Pippi saw that, she did the same. But as she had not drunk all of her chocolate, a little stream ran down her forehead and over her nose. She caught it with her tongue and lapped it up. Here they are at the table. You can see Mr. Nielsen with a cup on his head and Pippi with a cup on her head. "Waste not, want not," she said. Tommy and Annika licked their cups clean before they put them on their heads. When everybody had had enough and the horse had had his share, Pippi took hold of all 4 corners of the tablecloth and lifted it up so that the cups and plates tumbled over each other as if they were in a sack. Then she stuffed the whole bundle in the wood box. "I always like to tidy up a little as soon as I've eaten," she said. Then it was time for games. Pippi suggested that they play a game called "Don't Touch the Floor." It was very simple. The only thing one had to do was walk all around the kitchen without once stepping on the floor. Pippi skipped around in the twinkling of an eye, and even for Tommy and Annika it was quite easy. You began on the drain board, and if you stretched your legs enough, it was possible to step onto the back of the stove, from the stove to the wood box, from the wood box to the hat shelf, and down onto the table. From there, across 2 chairs to the corner cupboard. Between the corner cupboard and drain board was a distance of several feet, but luckily, there stood the horse. If you climbed up on him at the tail end and slid off at the head end, make a quick turn at exactly the right moment, you landed exactly on the drain board. When they played this game for a while, and Annika's dress was no longer her next best dress, but her next best one, and Tommy had become as black as a chimney sweep, they decided to think up something else. "Suppose we go up to the attic and visit the ghosts," suggested Pippi. Annika gasped. "Are there really ghosts in the attic?" she asked. "Are there ghosts? Millions," said Pippi. "It's just swarming with all sorts of ghosts and spirits. You trip over them whenever you walk. Shall we go up?" "Oh, Pippi," said Annika, and looked reproachfully at her. "Mama says there aren't any such things as ghosts and goblins," said Tommy boldly. "And well, she might," said Pippi, "because there aren't any anywhere else. All the ghosts in the world live in my attic, and it doesn't pay to try to make them move, but they aren't dangerous. They just pinch you in the arms so you get black and blue, and they howl and they play ninepins with their heads." Do they really play ninepins with their heads?" "Sure, that's just what they do," said Pippi. "Come on, let's go up and talk to them. I'm good at playing ninepins." Tommy didn't want to show he was frightened. In a way, he really did want to see a ghost. That would be something to tell the boys at school. Besides, he consoled himself with the thought that ghosts probably wouldn't dare to hurt Pippi. He decided to go along. Poor Annika didn't want to go under any circumstances, but then she happened to think that a tiny little ghost might sneak downstairs while she was sitting alone in the kitchen. That decided the matter. Better to be with Pippi and Tommy among thousands of ghosts than to be alone in the kitchen with even the tiniest little ghost. Pippi went first. She opened the door to the attic stairs. It was pitch dark there. Tommy took a firm grip on Pippi, and Annika took an even firmer grip on Tommy, and so they went up. The stairs creaked and squeaked with every step. Tommy began to wonder if it wouldn't have been better to stay down in the kitchen, and Annika didn't need to wonder. She was sure of it. At last they came to the top of the stairs and stood in the attic. It was pitch dark there, too, except where a little moonbeam shone on the floor. There were sighs and mysterious noises in every corner when the wind blew in through the cracks. "Hi, all you ghosts!" shrieked Pippi. But if there was any ghost there, he certainly didn't answer. "Well, I might have known," said Pippi. "They've gone to a council meeting of the Ghost and Goblin Society." Annika sighed with relief and hoped that the meeting would last a long time. But then, just then, an awful sound came from one of the corners of the attic. "Ooh," it said, and a moment later Tommy saw something come rushing toward him in the dimness. He felt it brush his forehead and saw something disappear through a little window that stood open. He shrieked to high heaven, "A ghost! A ghost!" And Annika shrieked with him. "That poor thing will be late for the meeting," said Pippi, "if it was a ghost and not an owl. For that matter, there aren't any ghosts," she continued after a while. "If anybody insists that there are ghosts, I'll tweak them in the nose." "Yes, but you said so yourself," said Annika. "Is that so? Did I?" said Pippi. "Well, then I'll certainly tweak my own nose." And she took a firm grip on her nose and tweaked it. After that, Tommy and Annika felt a little calmer. In fact, they were now so courageous that they ventured to go up to the window and look out over the garden. Big, dark clouds sailed through the sky and did their best to hide the moon, and the wind sighed in the trees. Tommy and Annika looked around, but then, oh horrors, they saw a white figure coming toward them. "A ghost!" shrieked Tommy wildly. Annika was so scared she couldn't even shriek. The ghost came nearer and nearer. Tommy and Annika hugged each other and shut their eyes. But then they heard the ghost say, "Look what I found. Papa's nightshirt and an old sea chest over here. If I hem it up around the bottom, I can wear it." Pippi came up to them with the nightshirt dangling around her legs. "Oh, Pippi, I could have died of fright," said Annika. "But nightshirts aren't dangerous," Pippi assured her. "They don't bite anybody, except in self-defense." Pippi now decided to examine the sea chest thoroughly. She lifted it up and carried it over to the window and opened the cover so that The little moonlight could fall on the contents of the chest. There were a great many old clothes, which she threw out on the attic floor. There was a telescope, a few books, 3 pistols, a sword, and a bag of gold pieces. "Tiddly palm and piddly day," said Pippi contentedly. "It's so exciting," said Tommy. Pippi gathered everything in the nightshirt, and down they went to the kitchen again. Annika was perfectly satisfied to leave the attic. "Never let children handle firearms," said Pippi, and took a pistol in each hand and prepared to fire. "Otherwise, some accident can easily happen," she said, shooting off both pistols at once. "That was a good thing," she announced, and looked up in the ceiling. The bullets had made 2 holes. "Who knows," she said hopefully. "Perhaps the bullets have gone right through the ceiling and hit some ghosts in the legs. That will teach them to think twice before they set out to scare any innocent little children again. Because even if there aren't any ghosts, they don't need to go around scaring folks out of their wits, I should think. Would each of you like a pistol?" she asked. Tommy was enchanted, and Annika also very much wanted a pistol, provided it wasn't loaded. "Now we can organize a robber band if we want to," said Pippi. She held the telescope up to her eyes. "With this, I think I can see the fleas in South America," she continued. "And it'll be good to have if we do organize a robber band." Just then there was a knock at the door. It was Tommy's and Annika's father, who had come to take them home. It was long past their bedtime, he said. Tommy and Annika hurried to say thank you, bid Pippi goodbye, and collect all their belongings, the flute, the brooch, and the pistols. Pippi followed her guests out to the porch and watched them disappear through the garden. They turned around to wave. The light from inside shone on her. There she stood with her stiff red braids, dressed in her father's nightshirt, which billowed around her feet. In one hand she held a pistol, and in the other the sword. She saluted with it. When Tommy and Annika and their father reached the gate, they heard her calling. They stopped to listen. The wind whistled through the trees so they could just barely hear what she said. "I'm going to be a pirate when I grow up," she cried. "Are you?" And that's the end of the book.